a pact with senior workers. They have paid into a system. They have an anticipation of that, but it is not long-term sustainable for this country. So, yeah.
Back to something I actually know something more about. Energy. I did a study between this state, Colorado, Wyoming. There's somewhere in the very minimum 2 trillion, maybe 4 trillion barrels of shale oil. There's somewhere between 30 and 200 billion barrels of tar sands. That doesn't even count the oil and gas that
in the basin.
That doesn't even count traditional oil and gas. You put that on a basis with the Middle East reserves, which are somewhere around maybe 1.25 trillion, if you can really believe their numbers. We sit on the energy source. Then you throw in coal. I mean, you put all that together. Utah is in a unique position to be its own standalone economic power, much like Alaska or Texas. Okay. What can you do? What can we do to unleash that power to, one, we talk about jobs. Talk about jobs. Those are high-paying jobs that go into this kind of business. What can we do to unleash that and stop the courts from continuously overriding and taking control and seem to be working on a secondary government around us?
Well, my solution is send a businessman to the Senate. Send somebody who has been involved in natural resource extraction industries. I've been involved in the geothermal industry. I'm a big believer in natural resource extraction. It's an enormous amount of wealth. But just to put it in perspective, we import today 70% of our oil from overseas. Trillions of dollars going out of this country in terms of wealth to sustain our demand for energy, for oil. If we were to plow that into our own lands, that same amount of money would create jobs, economic development, wealth. It would strengthen our country. We are in a time when we have to make those kinds of decisions. We have to do that because to long-term keep this country as strong and as healthy and as wealthy as we need to be to face the coming competition, those decisions have to be made. We're going to have to drill in ANWR. We're going to have access to the public lands in this state. We have an enormous amount of high-quality coal down in the Caparowitz and the Grand Staircase Escalante, and Clinton made that monument for a variety of reasons, but I think Senator Bennett failed to fight when Bush was president and we had control of the Senate and everything else to try and move those boundaries back to some reasonable smaller footprint so that we could extract some of those natural resources. Today, Obama is trying to grab the San Rafael and create a monument there. Lieutenant Governor Bell said, "We've been honored enough, thank you." But I think as a senator, I think you have to fight, champion, and try and open up access to those at every turn. And it's critical for the long-term viability of this state and our education system, because we get a lot of money from natural resources and royalties, and ultimately the jobs and the wealth that we have to create here. Now, one of the things that they failed to do was amend the Antiquities Act when we had power. And Wyoming is exempt from these monuments and these locking out some of our lands. Utah needs to get an exemption as well. And now that they've kind of come to their senses, they're going to try and fight for that. But guess what? We're in the minority now, and the Democrat's the president. Well, if we had tried to do that when we were in the majority and we had a Republican president, it would have been a lot easier to amend that for states like Utah who depend on these natural resources. So that's one area. And the other area is we've got to change the Endangered Species Act, because that is also anti-development and locks us out of a lot of our lands for natural resource extraction and development. So, and I think that people are starting to get that. I mean, radical environmentalists have had such a strong control of policy, but today the economy is demanding that we improve and get more efficient as a nation because we're $14 trillion in debt.
Okay. Tim, I've talked to you several times. I think you're a wonderful guy. I intend to vote for you at the state convention.
Okay,
but,
thanks for coming. And
yeah. Okay, here's the but. I do not want to see you draw a retirement equal to your first term's pay once you're done with the Senate. I do not want to see you here in 24 years. I believe our founding fathers had a very wise plan when they talked about citizen legislators who then went back to their communities. Will you please address your feelings on that?
Absolutely.
I haven't heard you talk about that yet.
So the founding fathers wrestled with the idea of term limits, and they ultimately, it was in the articles, but they didn't put it in the Constitution. There was a time when we had people like George Washington who self-limited. He could have been president until he died. I mean, he was such an honored and powerful founder of our country. Yet he self-limited to 2 terms. People at that time were citizen legislators. They came in and served for a time. It wasn't a full-time deal. They came in, they made the legislation, they went home, they went back to their farms. They, fast forward to today. George Will, who's a commentator, who many of you might know, said that term limits are a terrible idea whose time has come. And the reason he said that is because the system today is broken. It is fundamentally busted. You have a 60-year congressman in John Dingell, who's been in Michigan, who has so much power. It is his money. It's not that he thinks it's his money. It is. He's been spending it as it was his money for a long time. And that seniority system and that longevity, I think, has hurt the United States. And I mentioned Robert Byrd. Robert Byrd is Strom Thurmond. All of these guys that are there forever. I mean, Robert Byrd can barely put together a coherent sentence today. And we're saying that that's good government. It's a broken system that is demanding that we have term limits. And I will champion every year that I'm in the Senate